Hello and welcome to our Monday evening meditation class, broadcasting to you tonight from EFRA Space in Brixton. My name is Sudhika, and tonight we're going to be looking at practicing and exploring the practice known as the mindfulness of breathing. Mindfulness of breathing, you could say, is probably the foundational Buddhist meditation practice. People have been doing this practice for thousands of years. In fact, traditionally it's said that this was the practice that the Buddha was doing at the time that he gained enlightenment 2,500 years ago. So it's a practice which is well tried and tested, and really you could say is the basis or the foundation of all other meditation practices in the Buddhist tradition. And I'm sure that those of you joining us today, there may be some people who are quite new to meditation, but I'm guessing that many of you will have done this meditation many times before and will be quite familiar with the basic techniques of the practice. But the theme tonight is a mindfulness refresher. So the idea is to enable you to, even if you've done this practice for some time, even if this practice is quite familiar to you, the aim of tonight is to help you sort of re-engage with the practice in a new and fresh way. And I'll say something more about that in a minute, but we'll just start off doing a short meditation just to enable us to arrive in the space and to transition from whatever we've been doing during the course of the day to a more meditative state. So I invite you to sit down and to find a comfortable posture for meditation. Focusing particularly on the physical sensations in your body. Many of us spend a lot of the time during the day working on a computer or doing things which mean that the focus of our attention tends to be very much caught up in our thoughts and in our sense of vision. And really a key to settling into this practice is to learn to withdraw the focus of our attention from our thoughts and to really connect as fully as we can with the physical sensations in our bodies. So if you close your eyes, and first of all, feeling the weight of your body, your feet and knees and ankles touching the ground, your sitting bones at the base of your spine resting on the cushion or the chair. Feeling your pelvis nice and balanced on the cushion. Looking for a sense of rootedness in the base of your posture, like a tree with a very broad root base. So the base of our posture is very solid, very grounded, very stable. And then out of that stable base, the stable base of our pelvis, we can feel our spine rising up towards the sky. And we can imagine the very top of our heads, the crown of our heads, being drawn up towards the ceiling as if by an invisible thread. And our chins tucked slightly in, so we can feel a slight stretch in the back of the neck. And we can feel our shoulders drawn slightly back. Feeling our chests nice and open. so that the breath and the energy can move very freely through the front of the body. I'm going to suggest, just for a moment, placing the palm of one of your hands over the center of your chest. So you're just putting the palm of one hand over the center of the chest, and you're feeling that connection. You can feel it in the palm of your hand as it touches the front of your body. You can also feel it in the front of the body. A sense of warmth and contact. And just let that sensation of contact be the main focus of your attention. And tune into the way that the breath moves in the front of your body, trying to stay continuously with that smooth, continuous movement of the breath. So as the breath comes in, it pushes against the palm of your hand. As the breath goes out, the palm of your hand sinks a little bit. Just tuning into that simple sensation, just staying with that. And as we do this, we can notice if there's any subtle patterns of tightness or holding that we notice in our bodies. Very often you'll feel a sense of tightness around the jaw or the throat. We'll notice that our eyes are a bit scrunched up. And these little patterns of tension are often a clue that we're holding back in some way from being fully present with our experience. And so with the practice of mindfulness, we bring a gentle attention to those patterns of tightness. And as we breathe out, we encourage a sense of releasing and letting go. So we're letting go more and more of the things that prevent us from being present to our experience. And as we do that, we can come more and more fully into our bodies, into our direct, embodied experience. And hopefully as we do that, we can start to tune in more and more to the alive, energetic quality of that direct experience. Just feeling the life energy in our bodies. And there can be a deep sense of well-being that comes when we tune into this alive, energetic quality in our experience. And whatever's going on in our lives, whatever difficulties or situations we're giving our attention to, we can always come back to this alive, energetic quality of experience, and that can be a source of refuge for us. Just staying for a couple more breaths. And now placing your hand back in your lap. Just staying for a few more moments with that gentle movement of the in-breath and out-breath. Using the out-breath to let go of any little patterns of tension. And when you're ready, we'll bring this short arriving meditation to an end. I'll do a little bit more meditation later on, but I'm just going to say a few things about the practice of mindfulness. So yes, this week has been billed as a mindfulness refresher. I think they're even saying this is like Freshers Week. I know that very often meditation classes are very busy in the first few weeks of the new year, because I think it taps into people's New Year's resolutions. I know it's a very common thing for people in the new year to feel like they want to make a fresh start with things. You know, maybe towards the end of the year we've got a bit fed up with our old selves and our old habits, and we kind of really want to sort of move into the new year and make a fresh start. And I mean, in a way that really ties in with the theme and the practice of mindfulness. I think the sort of fresh quality of direct experience is a very good way of thinking and speaking about mindfulness. I think one of the difficulties that we have if we do a meditation practice over a long period of time is that after a while the practice can become a bit habitual. You know, we set ourselves up, we go through the routine every day, sort of sticking to the different stages and doing all of that. But somehow, you know, the original freshness can start to fade after a while. We start to, in a way, almost get sort of incorporated into our habits. So I think there's a real trick around meditation and mindfulness practice particularly, to try and keep looking for that sort of freshness of direct experience. And one of the ideas that I often talk about with mindfulness is the idea of beginner's mind. And there was a Zen teacher called Dr. Suzuki in the 60s who wrote very beautifully about what he called beginner's mind. And the idea of beginner's mind is it's the quality of awareness that we have when we see something amazing for the first time. And the analogy that's often given is of a child seeing the ocean for the first time. So imagine you're a child, you've heard lots of stories about the ocean, how the ocean's so fantastic, but you've never seen it. And, you know, eventually your parents take you to see the ocean, and, you know, you get out of the car or walk over the hill and, you know, there's the ocean. You know, and there's that moment where you see the ocean for the first time and it's wow, you know. So that's amazing, that's really amazing. And in a way that's the quality that we're looking for through the practice of mindfulness. It's the quality of seeing each moment of experience as unique and new and never experienced before, which of course is very different to our normal habitual way of seeing things. I mean, you may have noticed it if you go to a very beautiful place, or if you go to the ocean, maybe for the first day, you're going around going, wow, the ocean is so beautiful, or the mountains are so beautiful. But after 3 or 4 days, we just kind of think, oh yeah, the ocean is still there, it sort of loses it becomes kind of incorporated into our habitual way of seeing things, habitual way of relating to things. So what we're looking for this from the practice of mindfulness is trying to get back to that original sort of freshness of perception, that original, in a way, we've maybe done this practice thousands of times before. We've been doing the mindfulness practice for years and years and years, but we've never had this breath before. This breath is absolutely new. This out breath, first time I've ever done this out breath. In a way, every moment there's a completely different, unique set of conditions going on. We've never been the same person as we are now. We've never been in exactly the same place as we are now. So this is the kind of sense that we're trying to get to with the mindfulness of breathing, the sense of being able to connect, I suppose, with the reality, with the unique reality of each moment of experience. And the essence of mindfulness practice is, in a sense, it's the difference between what you could call direct experience and what you could call secondary experience. So if you think about our lives, we're always having sensory experience. Every moment of our lives we're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, feeling. All of our senses are taking in information from the world around us. And then, most of the time, we overlay onto that direct experience, we overlay a second level of experience, which is to do with interpretation, reflection, recognition, planning, remembering, regretting, desiring, all of these things that we do, all of these human tendencies, we lay over the foundation of our kind of direct experience. So in a way, we've got these two things going on in every moment. We've got our, what we call our primary experience, our direct sensory experience, and then we've got the whole superstructure that we lay over it. And the problem is that very often the superstructure kind of takes over, actually. I mean, one of the things that happens when we get very stressed, or we're very, very busy, or whatever, is we find it very difficult to break out of our kind of conceptual frameworks. We're just sort of totally taken up. We've got a problem, we're totally taken up with thinking about that problem every moment. Or maybe we find we can't sleep because, our thoughts are just going crazy around this particular situation. So the skill of mindfulness, in a way, is being able to step back from that whole sort of structure of secondary experience and just come back to the very, very simple direct experience. And, to tie that in with the notion of beginner's mind, you could say that, if we actually observe our thoughts, and maybe this is something that becomes clear as you get older, that our thoughts are incredibly monotonous and repetitive, actually. Nearly all the time, our thoughts are just going over the same situations over and over again in a very kind of uncreative kind of a way, actually. And you may notice that when I've got a tendency to sort of inner complain, like I'll sort of be going to work or something, I'll have this sort of voice going on in my head, complaining about this and that. And we tend to get sort of so drawn into those patterns of thought. So the nature of our conceptual thought is derivative, habitual. It's going over the same ground. It's like watching repeats on TV. Watching a TV program we've seen hundreds of times before, thousands of times before maybe. Whereas direct experience, as I say, is always new. We've never had this experience before. It's got that kind of quality, almost like being like a splash of water in the face. It's this moment where I see the ocean for the first time. So So the core of the practice of mindfulness, we teach it with the different stages, and we have the breath, and in a way, it's not particularly about learning to be very, very concentrated on the breath. In a way, that's just the structure of the practice, as it were. You could say that the essence of the practice is looking for that. Well, noticing the difference between primary and secondary experience, and looking for that electric quality of direct experience, and then really sort of focusing and staying on that. And of course, mindfulness itself is something that we're looking to practice all the time. We're looking to practice outside meditation. In any moment we can choose to really focus on what we're doing, rather than doing what we're doing and thinking about something entirely different. So I think that's probably enough as sort of introduction for mindfulness. So the core practice is to notice where the focus of our attention is, and really, as far as we can, to pay really precise, direct, non-judgmental attention to what is really going on in our direct experience moment by moment, and really trying to sort of stay with that continuously over time. And then inevitably we'll notice, our conceptual thoughts start kicking in, and we'll find ourselves somewhere in the middle of a mind-created situation, and then we can just let that go and come back. I mean, in a way, that working with the kind of distractions in the practice, it's a bit like waking up out of a dream. Actually, we may find we're sitting here meditating, and then a thought will come into my mind about some conversation I had with somebody the other day, and my thoughts will go back into that conversation, and I'll be replaying that conversation in my mind, and I'll have forgotten completely that I'm supposed to be meditating. I might even, I'll be thinking about all the things that I could have said in that discussion, and whatever. Be really cool to feel the emotions of that conversation, going up again. And then at some point, I'll kind of catch myself. All right. This is all just thoughts. I'm just caught up in my thoughts now. And in that moment, we can come back to the present moment, to the next breath. And it is a bit like waking up out of a dream. When we're caught up in those thoughts, we're not really awake, we're not really here. Yeah. But the moment we catch it, the moment we come back, there's that direct experience again. There's the kind of vividness and aliveness of the direct experience. So that's what we're looking for. So we'll do a period of the mindfulness of breathing. I'll lead it through in the usual way. But I really encourage you particularly to notice the difference. Notice the difference between the direct experience. Notice how your experience is when you're really in touch with direct experience, and how that's different to how your experience is when you're caught up in thoughts. So yeah, just take a few moments to resettle. Feeling your contact with the ground again. And taking a moment again to notice all those little patterns of tightness and holding. Just gently encouraging a sense of releasing and letting go. Looking again for that energetic quality in your body. See if you can feel the energy in your body, a kind of tingling in your body. So we have a physical body, a body that has weight and mass. But that physical body is animated by the life energy in us. And with practice we can start to tune into that life energy and enjoy that life energy, get pleasure from the simple energetic experience of the body. And start tuning into the movement of your breath in the front of your body. Noticing the rising and falling of your chest. And feel the breath itself, the air flowing in and out through your nostrils. Cooler on the in-breath and warmer on the out-breath. Looking for the smooth, continuous, gliding movement of the breath. Looking to stay continuously present with each movement of the breath. So the breath is like a flow. And we let our awareness become like a flow, to flow with the breath. And to stay with that, we count very silently, very gently at the end of each out-breath, counting from 1 to 10. As we breathe out, we can let go of all tightness and holding in the body. And then the next stage, counting in the pause before each in-breath. Really paying attention to the in-breath. Opening to the fact that each breath is unique. Keep looking for that alive quality in your direct experience and stay with that. You notice your attention has gone off into a train of thought, just gently guiding your attention back to the next in-breath. And then feel the energy of that direct experience. Now we let go of the counting and just stay with just the movement of the breath. And in this stage, it's very good to keep a sense of connection with the body. Don't just go into watching the breath from inside your head. Really feel the breath as though you're breathing with the whole of your body. You could imagine as you breathe in, the whole of your body expands. All the cells of your body fill with oxygen. As you breathe out, the whole of your body empties itself out into space.
time coming more and more fully into that alive, energetic quality of your direct experience. Noticing the ways that we hold back from that, and gently letting any tension and holding drop away. In the final stage of the practice, keep that sense of breathing with the whole of your body, but bring the center of your attention, the focus, to the point where you first feel the touch of the breath inside your nostrils. Just staying with that subtle sensation of the breath touching your body. Looking for a sense of joy and pleasure in the sensation of the breath moving in the body. A sense that it's wonderful to be alive. Each moment of experience is something unique and precious and wonderful. Now just scan through your body again and notice if there's any subtle level of tension or holding going on still. See if you can breathe into any areas that are tight. And again, just releasing and relaxing a little bit more. See if you can give yourself a little bit more fully to this present moment. In another minute, I'll ring the bell to bring this practice to a close. Just finishing off by coming back to an ordinary awareness of your body, feeling once again your connection to the ground. As your hands resting in your lap. When I ring the bell, we can open our eyes and bring this meditation to an end. So I hope you're able to connect with the practice there. We've got about 15 minutes now before the end of the class, so invite you if you have any questions you want to ask or anything you want to share, and by all means do. I'm not quite sure who's on the screen this evening. So give a shout out to who's here. No, just say a few names.
Okay, we got Tom, we got Jill, Peter, Ian, Alison, Daisy May, and Cameron.
Good.
Oh, and Pam.
Are there any questions? If you have any questions, put them in the chat box. One thing I haven't mentioned, which is an important part of mindfulness practice, is in a way, one aspect of mindfulness is that it's sort of non-judgmental. So when we look at our experience from a place of mindfulness, we're really just observing what's happening without adding anything to it in terms of interpretation or judgment. And actually, one of the reasons why it can be difficult for us to practice mindfulness is that we can have very, very strong patterns of judgment, very strong sort of internalized beliefs that it's not okay to experience certain things. So when we start to experience that certain thing that it's not okay to experience, then something in our minds will kind of shut down or turn away from that experience. So I think with mindfulness, it's very important to just have this attitude of, on the inside at least, in our inner world, kind of anything goes. Everything is okay. I mean, in a way, it's the equivalent of the first stage of the metta bhavana. Actually, it's that whatever's happening in our inner experience is
just part of us, it's just part of the way our experience is. And we can pay attention equally to pleasant experiences as unpleasant experiences. You could say that mindfulness is discriminative but non-judgmental. So, through mindfulness we do recognise whether a state is pleasurable or painful, and we probably recognise whether a state is skillful or unskillful, whether it leads to happiness or suffering. But there's not that part of us that would go, well, that's not okay. You see what I mean? So in a way it discriminates in the sense of knowing what's what, knowing what's positive, knowing what's less helpful. But it doesn't judge in the sense of splitting off from that experience and just going, well, that's wrong and bad. And I think that the more we can cultivate on the inside that attitude of accepting, allowing, letting be, in a way the more the whole of our experience can kind of come into awareness and be transformed in a way. Whereas if we're sort of judging our own inner experience, the problem with that is we're kind of splitting off from ourselves in a certain way. We're kind of creating we're feeling something, but we don't think it's okay that we're feeling it, but we're feeling it. So there's this kind of internal conflict. Whereas in a way, what mindfulness does is it actually, anything that's split internally, it kind of unifies it. There's a lovely poem by Rumi where he says, be like the hotel owner that greets all the guests at the door. So this quality of awareness that anything that turns up, and he says, even if they're a crowd of beggars who've come to clean out all your furniture, still welcome them, invite them in. And this is this quality of awareness, this quality of mindfulness that's sort of welcoming in the whole of our experience. And of course, in a way, if we welcome in all of our experience, all of our experience will sort of settle and be okay and be transformed in a positive way. Whereas if we're trying to keep certain aspects of our experience out, well, they'll only keep knocking at the door harder and harder until they actually force themselves in, and cause us problems. So this quality of acceptance, allowing, letting be is very central to the practice of mindfulness.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, Jack.
So you spoke a bit about beginner's mind at the start.
Yeah.
Do you see it as something of a paradox that we're kind of imagining that we're on this path and we're going somewhere?
Yeah.
And yet, I can't remember the name of this teacher that you mentioned, but he kind of says what we're trying to get to is a state of kind of, I know it's not childlike, I know he's not saying regress to the state of a child, but so it's like we're progressing towards
simplicity.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is a paradox, isn't there? I mean, I don't know if you know that the Heart Sutra, he says, in the Heart Sutra, it says, there is no path. You get these teachings, from the sort of highest possible perspective. When we come across the spiritual life, we have our kind of ordinary everyday sense of ourselves and wanting to grow and develop and so on. So, in a way, the metaphor of the path makes sense for us. In our day-to-day lives, we follow this path. We have this. In a way, almost the image of a path is almost inherent in life, isn't it? Whether you're a Buddhist or not, you still somehow you imagine your life as going down this track. When you're young, you're at the beginning of it. And you kind of each year you kind of go on another stage. So, in a way, that is almost sort of built into our ordinary everyday experience of life, isn't it? This idea of a path, of sort of following a path. But I think what it's saying is that, from the highest perspective, there is no self. There is no self separate from the world. Time and space are kind of constructs of consciousness and so on. And, for the deepest level, in a way, there is just this one empty, universal cosmic moment. And that is reality. But we can't really live out of that perspective all the time. We may not be able to live out that perspective very much at all. So, in a way, for the time that we're not in touch with that kind of vast vision of reality, then we have these maps and models that help us to live our life in a practical and helpful way. So I think you're right, it is a sort of paradox. Yeah. And I think you do get a sense of this. I don't know whether if you practice, you do get a sense sometimes that there's a kind of timeless dimension to things. And I have it sometimes if I go on a solitary retreat. I say I'll do a solitary retreat and then I'll be back in London being busy, and then I'll go on another solitary retreat, say a year or 2 years later, and I sit down to meditate, and fairly quickly I feel like I'm in touch with something that, the last solitary retreat was only sort of 5 minutes ago. There's something that's happening at a completely different time scale to the normal linear time scale that we live in. And perhaps the tradition would say there's a reality that's beyond time and space altogether, and that through our practice we're getting this sort of glimpses of this timeless presence, which it's not that it goes on for a long time. It actually exists outside time altogether. I don't know if that starts. That's probably more confusing than at the start.
I was just thinking with the beginner's mind thing. It's like, I guess my question is kind of around. It's hard to track progress when what you're trying to get to is beginner's mind. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think in a funny way, we very often have an experience of beginner's mind sort of towards the beginning of the spiritual life, and in a way that's what sort of starts us off. Very often you hear people talking about their spiritual life, you'll find that they had this experience earlier on, and suddenly that woke them up to the possibility of something completely beyond, and that they're sort of following that, in a way, the clue that glimpse gave them, and that's what the spiritual life is driven by. And in a sense, the progress is not so much in terms of, finding something new or different. It's actually that in a way everything was there in that initial glimpse, actually. And what the path is about learning to live more and more in relation to that original glimpse. I remember years ago meeting a Tibetan monk in the Indian Himalayas, and he was saying that when I was a very young man, when I was a boy, I felt like I wanted to give my life to the Buddha and to enlightenment, and now I'm an 80-year-old man and I still feel the same thing. That really struck me that he was saying it's the same feeling actually, if that makes sense. So you could say yes, there is a certain kind of progress that we make in the spiritual life, but very often it's not progress in the sense of getting something kind of new. It's more like it's progress in the sense of unpacking the implications of something that's been there right from the start. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
And in a way, those moments of beginner's mind actually reconnect us to that. They reconnect us to the sort of transcendental, the sense of, in the Prajna Paramita Sutras, it sort of says, well, don't think that enlightenment or the nature of reality is this kind of massive, incredible thing. Actually, everything is it. If the doors of our perception were cleaned enough, everything would be full of magic and mystery, and everything would be of the nature of enlightenment, in fact. It's just that, our habitual ways of perceiving things mean that we don't see that. We don't live directly in relation to it. But somehow those moments where we can kind of scrape away all the various different obscurations, all the different layers of habit and negativity that we've built up over the years, and we just get a glimpse, as it were, straight through directly. In a way, everything is there in those moments. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, that is really helpful. Thank you. Very clear.
Are there any questions in the chat?
No, we've just got Tom says great discussion earlier. Stephanie says thank you, Happy New Year, and Jill says thank you, Surika. Helpful teachings, lovely.
Okay. All right, well that's good. That's nice. I mean, one of the strange things about doing this online is, of course, when you're teaching in a normal situation, you're kind of looking. You could see people would be nodding, or people don't like it, sort of like this. But you don't get that. You're just talking to the camera. It's very difficult to know. Very difficult to know whether it's okay or not.
Pam says thank you. Wonderful meditation.
Good. Oh, good. I'm glad. So, well, thank you very much indeed to everyone who's tuned in. There's a couple of things to mention. First up, we've got a retreat planned for. It's the weekend of the 15th to the 17th of January. It's a couple of weekends' time. It's an online retreat, and I think Jack's going to helpfully post a link to it in the chat box. I think you can book on the retreat by going on the website or by clicking on the link in the chat box. And the other thing to mention is Dana. If you've enjoyed the class, if you feel like you've got something out of it, then do consider making a donation to help us keep the classes running. I think we have to still keep renting this room, and we've got costs involved in keeping these broadcasts going. So if you could help us with that, that would be very much appreciated. I think that's everything. Is there anything else I haven't mentioned?
The Zoom chat.
Oh yes, a Zoom chat at 8:30. Is that right?
Well, it's 8:30 now. I think it's 8:45. So
8:45.
we've got 15 minutes to make yourself a cup of tea, etc.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming. And I think that's brings us to the end.
I'm just putting all the links up.